Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Talk with the Titans, live from London, UK, all the way to the US of A and worldwide. I'm your host, Kalam L, and this is Talk with the Titans. You know what? Tonight's show, we've got the living legend himself in the studios, Dr. Charles Finch. Greetings to you, Dr. Charles Finch.
Thank you very much. My children would laugh uproariously to know that I'm a living legend. So I'm going to tell them that, and I'll get a good laugh from them about that.
I love that.
But thank you for having me on.
Definitely. And for those of you who don't know who, Dr. Charles Finch is, he's been around with the greats such as Ivan Van Sertima, Dr. Ben Buchanan, Anthony Browder. You know what? The list goes on, actually. You know what? Furthermore, let me not even say anymore. Dr. Charles Finch, could you please give us a brief bio of all of your achievements and the things that you've done?
Well, I guess I could say it's hard to know where to start, but I am a physician, a doctor by training and by profession, still working in the medical profession. Married with 7 children and 8 grandchildren. I always like to mention that. I have been I like to say that I had to create a private university in which I was both pupil and professor beginning in 1971, in which I started a systematic and continuous study that goes to this very day into the origins and sources of African history and culture. Why? Because I was not satisfied with the idea that the history of people of African descent, especially in the diaspora, begins merely 500 years ago. And then I came across a book that was kind of my road to Damascus. That was that Damascus moment. That was World's Great Men of Color by J.A. Rogers, which I'm sure many of your audience are familiar with. He was actually from Jamaica, as you know, originally. And that, as I said, set me on a path. Because what I would do is I would go and read his sources, then read the sources of his sources. And for 10 years, from 1971 to 1981, I was kind of doing what I thought was a lonely labor. And as I say, I was getting my medical training. I am a family physician by training, living now in Atlanta, Georgia. But in 1981, I picked up a book. It was actually a journal by Ivan Van Sertima called the Journal of African Civilizations. That was another revelation, although it was actually a second revelation because I had read his book, They Came Before Columbus, a kind of landmark book for many of you, as you know, and kind of established his reputation as a scholar of the first rank. And I actually wrote him a letter after having read the Journal of African Civilizations. Now, I don't know how he got my number. Maybe I put it on there. But a week after I sent that letter, a call came to me, and it says, "This is Ivan Van Sertima." And I almost dropped the telephone. I couldn't imagine. That was just unimaginable, totally unexpected. We got it. He said he had read my letter. He was very impressed by it. And at the end of it, he wanted me to actually write an article on the history of blacks in medicine. And that led to, what did I say? I said, yes, of course. And that led to an article called The African Background of Medical Science, the first article I ever published in the Journal of African Civilizations, edited by Van Sertima. And in the end, I would publish 8 articles by Van Sertima. And that also later on started my speaking career. And I continued to publish, continued to speak. And in 1983, I actually met Sheikh Anta Diop in Senegal. And I had 4 more meetings with him, including one in London, interestingly enough, in 1985. Came to London because he was invited to London by Amon Sabas Khan of Karnak House, and I actually flew all the way to London to meet him and to invite him to Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, where he got his only, can you imagine this, his only honorary degree ever given to him by an institution of higher learning. He was there for King Week, and he met all of the major figures in the community for a solid week. In any case, that was also another landmark in my life. And anyway, that continued, and I remained friendly with Ivan Van Sertima. Unfortunately, Sheikh Anta died a year later. And then I eventually got to the place where I know what happened. Amon Sabas Khan collected 8 of my essays into a book called The African Background of Medical Science, and that was 7 or 8 essays there. That was my first book published under my name. And then maybe 2 years later, I published another book called Echoes of the Old Dark Land, Themes from the African Eden. Then in 1998, my most recent book called The Star of Deep Beginnings, A Genesis of African Science and Technology. Also, by that time, I was getting, even though I was still a physician and still practicing, still working at the Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta. And by the way, I had been traveling to London at least 3, maybe 4 times. The last time I think was 1991. Also to Egypt, 10 times to Egypt. Then published the Star of Deep Beginnings, The Genesis of African Science Technology in 1998. But I also got involved, deeply involved in African spirituality, traditional African spirituality, first in Senegal and then in Togo. And so it has continued. What can I say? There's more that could be said. As I said, my children grew up, started marrying, started having grandchildren, much to the delight of me and my wife. And here we are. And then Amunet got in touch with me. Amunet Hall, as I never knew her name was Hall until recently, got in touch with me and invited me to come back to the UK for the first time in about 25 years. So that is a synopsis of kind of where I've been and where I am right now.
Wow, wow, absolutely amazing. Yeah, and there's a slight echo in the background, but we're going to ride through all of that. If it's possible, could everybody just mute their mics at this present moment in time, because there is a minor feedback. Yes. So everybody who's watching live right now, could you please share this link as much as you can. Let everybody know that the living legend himself, Dr. Charles Finch, is actually with us right now, and he's going to go through a plethora of information tonight. So please share the link and let everybody know that we're live. Dr. Finch is here with us right now. So, you know, we've got literally a jam-packed show. I know, Dr. Finch, we've got, you got some information that you want to present to us concerning the African origins of science, the origins of culture, which is Africa. We're going to talk about the cosmic shift, the precession, the equinox. That's literally coming up right about now. So yeah, if you could just give us a nice overview of all of that information, and then we're going to get right into the grid of the presentation for today.
I, like Sheikh Anta Job and others, I follow or I adhere to the bioanthropological view of human evolution and human appearance on this planet. You know, other people take issue with that, but I do not. And having done so, we know that what we call Homo sapiens sapiens, that is anatomically modern human beings, first appeared on this planet as such, people exactly like you and me, 300,000 years ago. Where? Just where you might expect, Africa. Africa first. And for 200,000 years, they never left Africa. So that the history of humanity for the first 200,000 years of its existence is the history of humanity in Africa. And there's no evidence that they left Africa until about 90,000 years ago. Okay? But even when they left Africa, they left Africa as black people. That didn't change, by the way, until about 40,000 years ago, when a group of them got isolated behind the glaciers up in Europe and Central Asia and underwent adaptations that produced what we call the Caucasoid. But I don't have time to go into that in depth and detail, except to say, as soon as human beings appeared on this planet, they started the process of creating human culture. That started 300,000 years ago, also in Africa. So humanity and human culture begins there first. What is the highest phase of human culture? It's what we call civilization. That too appears first in Africa. Now, your chronologies that you will read in your standard histories, well, they may or may not have anything to do with reality, okay? Nonetheless, when we start talking about civilization that we can actually pinpoint and touch and have some tangible reference to, we have to go to Northeast Africa in the lands of Kemet and Kush. That is Egypt and Ethiopia, all right? But even the people from what we call Kemet or Egypt, let alone Ethiopia, their origins can be found in the, what do you want to call it, the Great Lakes regions of Africa, what is now Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, that area. How do we know this? Recently, there's been Y chromosome studies, you know, the molecular biology has done a lot to give us historical information. And one thing that it has told us in the last year or so is that the Y chromosomes of present-day Ugandans is exactly the same as 18th dynasty Egyptians. So those people could have not had to have come in terms of their ancestry from where? Inner Africa. You know, that's been a huge debate over the last almost 200 years. Although Sheikh Anta Diop just kind of laid that debate to rest. But the point is, there's no further debate available. When we talk about the people of ancient Egypt, the pyramid builders, the builders of Karnak, the founders of civilization, beginning anywhere from 10 to 12,000 years ago, we're talking about black African people who come from the inner part of Africa. Period. End of statement. There is no argument about that. And if there's anybody in the UK who wants to confront me about that, I'd be happy to have that argument. Love to have that argument. Blow them away without even trying. But okay. In America, nobody confronts us who are making that argument, at least not in person, not in face-to-face. Now, if we're talking about the highest phases of human culture, we're also talking about every aspect of that culture: art, architecture, science, and engineering. And so, and this is going to be one of the topics that I discuss, is how does science, technology, mathematics originate first in Africa? Now, we're not just talking about Egypt or Kemet. Okay, that is that's the highest expression of African culture and civilization, but it also came out of Kush. But we don't know that enough about Kush or Ethiopia. Why? Because compared to Egypt, archaeologists have pretty much ignored the Kush, pretty much, and we don't have as much information about Kush, but we know, and the Kushites themselves told Diodorus about 100 or 200 BC. He says, well, Egypt came from us. And the Egyptians didn't contradict that because they knew it was true. Okay, so when you're talking about Kemet, you're also talking about Kush, okay? Mm-hmm. Or what people today call Ethiopia, right? Ethiopia is a late term. It's a word that means sunburnt. But the people of that time didn't call themselves Ethiopia. That's what the Greeks called them, all right? And we're going to touch on that. Science and civilization in ancient Northeast Africa, how it emerged there. How what we think of as our religious and philosophical and mythological concepts emerged there. How the civilization of modern times, with its architecture, its engineering, emerged there first. So what we can say, therefore, is that Northeast Africa taught civilization to the world. And they didn't just stay there, by the way. There's evidence that they moved out into the rest of the world, and that's a whole other discussion. Ivan Van Sertima is the one who brought that discussion to, into prominence, into scholarly prominence, and there are others who have done that work. Again, is just, when we're talking about the beginning of civilization, we're talking Africa. And not just Northeast Africa, because they look toward inner Africa for their sources and their origins. Where was their parentage from? Inner Africa. I mean, it makes sense, right? If humanity comes from there, human culture comes from there, it only makes sense that civilization as we understand it today also comes from there.
Definitely. So you know what, I need to ask you some questions actually, because I just realized, you know, on Talk with the Titans, we've started a new thing where we have a Titans quick fire round of top 10 questions, but I don't think we have enough time because I know how jam-packed this show is going to be. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, okay? So I think I might ask you about 4 or 5 questions, quick questions. Okay. You know, you made some statements about you know what, culture and science and technology in Egypt and Kush. So I want to know, are you telling me that there was no aliens, no extraterrestrial involvement in building and creating this advanced society known as ancient Egypt and the pyramids?
Let me say this. Let me get on both sides of this argument in one way. I have met Vuzabazula Credo Mutwa, who is a Sanusi from South Africa, or Sangoma, and he says yes, there is such things. There is such things of what we people call extraterrestrial visitations to the planet Earth. But to insist that it had to be them who created the civilization is just one way of getting around the uncomfortable fact, the inadmissible fact that civilization and its edifices were created by, were the product of the thought and the skill and the historical and cultural evolution of black people, black African people. All right? So that it's an absurd idea that the aliens came down. Oh, and why should they? I mean, why should they come down and do all that stuff that they say aliens did? Why is that necessary for that to happen? Why is that even a necessary explanation, except to remove the credit for creating this civilization away from black people? They don't go to China and say that the Chinese civilization was created by aliens. They don't go to India and say the Indian Hindu civilization was created by aliens. They don't go anywhere else except Africa to just talk about how the aliens were the ones that created civilization. But that doesn't mean that I'm against the idea that beings from other worlds outside may have made visits here. Okay, I'm not against that idea, but what I just flatly reject is the idea that they came here and found a civilization. I mean, because you ask the question, why should they? Why would they? Where are they? What evidence? Well, they're always talking about evidence for this and evidence for that. Aside from this useless speculation, what other evidence do you have that could have or would have happened?
Excellent. And you know what? Another great contention, which is currently surfacing within inside of the community as a whole, is the idea of Sumerians and the Egyptians, which did the Sumerians influence and create the Egyptian civilization, or was it the Egyptians that predated Sumerian culture and lent its artifacts and edifices and ideas?
There are so many ways to destroy that argument. There's a man named Rollins, an Egyptologist from the 19th century. You know, he said the Sumerians came from on the basis of their linguistic similarities. He says the original Sumerians were Cushites. Rawlinson said that, and he had that's in his book, and he goes on to demonstrate that. That's number one. The second thing is, so they say you can say the Sumerians started their civilization about 4200 BC. All right. Well, we know that the beginnings of the Assyrian calendar that was first developed in Egypt couldn't have been any later than, 4260 BC, because it's based on the cycle of Sirius. Okay, and that's number one. And then there's the work by a man named Robert Bauval and his collaborators, looking at the Sphinx and the orientation of the Sphinx. And he says, when you look at the Sphinx, it is oriented to the Alpha star in the constellation of Leo, and it's oriented to that Alpha star when Leo was rising at the equinox 10,500 BC. So if you can create a Sphinx 10,500 BC, that means the civilization was in place to do so. The people of Egypt themselves trace their civilization back like 36,000 years. So there's just that's the other reason why there has been this systematic attempt to down date the beginning of the first dynasty. So in other words, whenever you read any history of Egypt, they talk about the first dynasty beginning at 3200, 3100 BC. That's one of the other falsehoods and falsifications and frauds perpetrated about the history of ancient Kemet and Kush. There's no way it would have started that late. And there were some Egyptologists who themselves, Petrie being one, Budge being another, Bruce being another, who never accepted such low dates. And that was first started by a man named Breasted in 1905, who started the process of down dating the chronology of ancient Egypt. So when you start looking at these things and all the different, you start bringing all the different factors together, the idea that Sumeria gave rise to Egypt is ludicrous. It's laughable. And in fact, if you believe Rawlinson says the Sumerians were Cushites. You know what they call themselves? This is the name they had for themselves: blackheads.
That's right.
This is what the Sumerians call themselves: blackheads, not black hair, blackheads.
Mm,
I say to you, therefore, I rest my case.
excellent. And there's even
As Rollins said, correct. They were Cushites.
They were Kushites, and there's even further work done that links them or shows from a linguistic point of view that they were Bantu speakers. I believe they were.
Sorry, they were.
Yep, is that correct? They were Bantu speakers. The Sumerians.
I missed part of what you. I missed part of what you said. They're what kind of speakers?
Bantu speakers.
Oh, now that part I'm not aware of.
Okay.
I don't have. I can't respond to that because I'm not enough of a linguist. Because I always thought the Bantu language was somewhat later. But I'm not going to. But then it would have come out of a, shall we say, a parent language anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just not enough of a linguist to comment on that. So I think I will not, have anything to say about their relationship to the Bantu. That's just not something that I feel qualified to talk about.
Definitely, definitely. And is another contention, or there's something that's also been asserted with inside of Christianity as well, that the ancient Egyptians never believed in a god per se, but it was rather deifications of principles and sciences and nature. Is it possible to speak upon the differences between a god and a personification of natural sciences?
Okay, well, wait a minute. Again, there's part of what you said that didn't come through. They never believed what? They never.
In gods. They never had a concept of God. This is something that's been.
I don't understand. I don't understand where these ideas come from. If you look at, even a casual, reading of the religion of the ancient Egyptians, what they believed, just you couldn't possibly take that attitude. You couldn't possibly think that. In fact, they talked about the Creator, the thing that created everything, as Wa, W-A or U-A, and the Wa means literally the One, and that all the Neters were powers and principles. Neters, which we call deities, were powers and principles of the One. And that idea, that divine idea, in which they were given, in which they were identified them as their various Neters, whether it be Osiris and Isis and Thoth and Nut and Anubis. They are powers and principles of the One. The best person to, one of the best works on that is to read the books of Schwaller de Lubisch, R.A. Schwaller de Lubisch. He really explains that quite thoroughly and in a way that just removes any doubt about that. But they did have a concept of the one deity. And then the other thing, too, is your Judaism and Christianity, where do you think that came from? The Hebrews spent 450 years in Egypt. And then when you look carefully at their religion, you realize it was brought out with them from Egypt. Now, they modified it over the years afterward, but fundamentally, it came out of an Egyptian foundation. Christianity as much, if not more. Mm-hmm. And I even talk about that. I even discuss that in my book, The Echoes of Old Dark Land. I have two chapters, one on the Old Testament, one on the New Testament, just detailing how that happened.
Wow, wow. And if we would like to actually purchase any of your literature, especially this book that you're mentioning now, where could we actually find it?
Well, I am just trying to decide whether I'm going to bring a box of books with me. Okay. I probably will, so I'll have some books with me. That would be probably the most immediate way to get hold of the books. I'll probably be able to bring about 50 of them or so. Anyway, that's the most immediate way of getting hold of them.
Excellent. And for those of you who don't know, we've got Dr. Charles Finch. He's actually flying over to the UK and doing several sets of lectures and workshops in the UK, starting on Thursday the 17th, leading all the way up to the 22nd 17th to the
Third. I think it's
23rd.
23rd.
23rd. So if you would like to get any tickets or anything like that, I'm actually going to put the information at the bottom of this particular page, which is in the description box. Just go into the description box, look down, and you'll find it in there. You'll find the number, and you'll find other information that will link you in to purchase your tickets and the days, etc., that we're going to actually be hosting Dr. Charles Finch in the UK. So can't wait for that.
The one person who has made all this happen more than anyone is Aminette Hall. She has been indefatigable in making this happen. I even told her you should call these the Aminette Lectures because she has worked just unceasingly to make this happen. So she's the one. And she knows everything about my schedule and everything else. So that's Aminette Hall of the Blue Water family.
That's right. She has been very wonderful to actually work with and to set all this up. So shout outs to our sister Aminette Hall, and hopefully we're going to get her on a little bit later on, to just talk a little bit for us. Hope she isn't too shy to be on the screen or on camera right now. So yes, Dr. Charles Finch, actually, you know what, I need to ask you this question. How was it actually meeting the late, great Dr. Ivan Van Sertima and also Dr. Ben Buchanan?
The one, okay, I knew, okay, let me tell you the ones I knew the best, had the most interaction with. Yes, I met and knew Dr. Joseph Ben Buchanan. The ones, though, I had the most interaction with was one with Ivan Van Sertima, and the other was Sheikh Anta Diop, right? Now, Sheikh Anta Diop, to me, was you talking about a titan. He was practically a scholarly demagogue. Now, that's my personal opinion. Almost like a demigod to me. I almost think he could easily be considered maybe the supreme African scholar in the African world for the 20th century. You know, people talk about W.B. Du Bois and a few others. Yes, perhaps, but he's one of them. He's right up there in that pantheon. And then Ivan Van Sertima, well, he was a personal friend. He was also someone with whom I published my first 8 articles I ever published. I published with Ivan Van Sertima. I was on the podium on the podium with him in London, actually, back in 1989. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't even that late. It was like 87, 88. And I shared the panel with him several times. He was also at the Nile Valley Conference that we hosted here in Atlanta in 1984, and he published the proceedings of the Nile Valley Conference. And so They Came Before Columbus was his signature work, and equally as important were the 20 issues of the Journal of African Civilizations, which were anthologies on African civilizations. And they have continued to exert a tremendous impact and influence on scholars, me in particular, and many, many others. And so, as I say, he left his imprint. No doubt, he was Diop, certainly, and Van Sertima left a marked imprint, on the, shall we say, on African and African American letters. Let's put it like that. Many, many people more. There are other people who knew Dr. Ben Buchanan much better than I did, and they can tell you. I can get something out of here. It's in my way. I don't know why it's doing that. You could maybe interview them, and they can give you a much better, shall we say, response about his importance to them. I knew him, but I did not know him well, but I knew Van Sertima very well, and I got to know Sheikh Anta Diop well as well, also.
Great. And I know you're in Georgia. Georgia, Atlanta.
Yeah, Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia. And I know recently there was the 33rd year of ASCAC anniversary. Annual anniversary.
Yes.
Were you able to participate in the?
Yes. I was actually. I gave the kickoff lecture on Thursday night. They wanted me to talk about the Bennu Study Group. The Bennu Study Group was a study group that was organized in Atlanta in 1982. I was in that study group. Obadiah Williams was in that study group, and Asa Grant Hilliard was another person who was in the study group. Also, Askia Muhammad Toure. These are names that other people might know. We were very weren't very big. There was only 7 or 8 of us, but we organized two things. We organized the first Nile Valley Conference in Atlanta. That was in September of 1984. And then after that, we were instrumental, along with Lawrence Carter of the King Chapel at Morehouse College, in bringing Sheikh Anta Diop to the United States for the very first time in April of 1985, as I've already mentioned, where he got his only honorary degree in the whole world. Can you imagine? Nobody else in his entire life gave him an honorary degree until Morehouse College did in 1985. So the Better Study Group was deeply involved in both events, and they had me come and talk about that era between 1982 and 1986 at the ASCAC. I couldn't get to the rest of the ASCAC program because of the press of other business, and also I wasn't feeling well. I've been I'm just only now recovering from a bronchitis, and so that kept me from getting back to some of the other activities that were going on. But yes, I did was there at the kickoff, you might say, at the launch of the program, and it's supposed to have been very well attended. 300 people at least showed up. So I think it went off very well.
Definitely. I've actually been watching or been viewing the pictures, the images of the event. We had members of the Amun-Ra squad, such as Asai Hotep, Sunjedi, Ujau, Ankakek, all of these great names and scholars actually attend the ASCAC lecture, and potentially and possibly, I believe, Asai Hotep may have actually given a presentation, but don't hold me to that. I'm just looking at the images and I'm seeing them. It's absolutely amazing to see. It's now in its 33rd cycle. You know what? You yourself actually kicked off your your vocal scholarship based upon your outreach to Sheikh Anta Diop. Was it Sheikh? No.
Yes.
Yeah, Sheikh Anta Diop, and him actually contacting you back. Not a lot of these things actually take place nowadays. We have so much young, enthusiastic, budding researchers and scholars, but there seems to be a disjoint between the elder generation, the elder scholars, and the new young scholars coming up. How do you think we could best, reconnect with the elders, and the elders actually help and guide the pens of these new scholars, and to actually just spark them off?
I can only tell you what I and people like Dr Rkhty did, and one or two others. We didn't wait for them to come to us. We went to them. We went to Ivan Van Sertima. We either wrote him or called him. We went and met Sheikh Anta Diop. I met John G. Jackson, who I actually brought to Raleigh, North Carolina. Met John Henry Clark. So in other words, we did not wait for it to happen. We made it happen. And the only way, as you call it, well, let me just say, if the younger scholars are going to, as you say, make that connect, they're going to have to take the initiative. I mean, that's we will. In some ways, you don't even know who's out there doing work. That was true in certain cases where people didn't know who I was 30 or 40, 35 years ago until I started publishing with Van Sertima, and I had to make that first contact with Ivan Van Sertima to make that happen. So there's a certain amount of initiative that has to be taken by, as you call them, the younger scholars, and that is going to be. I mean, I'm only talking from my experience. That's going to be the most effective way to make that link.
Definitely. So I hope our younger scholars out there, please listen to our elders. Please try to contact them, reach out to them as well. They are literally a fountain house of wisdom. I was actually with Dr Rkhty a few months back, and the amount of stories this man has got to actually offer us, offer to me personally, was absolutely amazing. Driving with him, sitting with him in his hotel, and telling me all the stories of Dr. Ben, John Henry Clark, GM Jackson, etc., etc. It was absolutely amazing, and very much so inspiring. As a young researcher and scholar myself, it's good to actually have the elder generation imparting their wisdom onto you. Okay, so I'm going to move on right now. I just like to shout out the Blue Water family, and if you would like to actually get in contact with the team that is actually running the tour for Dr. Charles Finch, you can find them on bluewaterfamily.wordpress.com. I will repeat that. It's www.bluewaterfamilywordpress.com, and the tour is actually taking place from the 17th of this month. This is the Thursday to the 23rd of March 2016. That's if you're in the UK and you want to take part. Please visit that website and yeah, tune in. Definitely tune into that. Okay, Dr. Finch, please. You know what? I would love for you to start on the cosmic shift and the equinox. I was actually watching one of your lectures to do with the Dogons, and so I just want to go right into the celestial right now. I want to go right up there. So if you could give us some information on that, that would be absolutely amazing.
Well, I think the thing that this is a subject that I talk about quite a lot, as you can imagine. It's you got to understand what was accomplished. You had like 4 calendars created. There was a calendar based on the moon. I'm talking about ancient Africa, especially ancient Kemet. There's a solar calendar, the one that we know, all right? And then there was the Syrian calendar, the calendar based on the heliacal rising of Sirius, which was 1,460 years. And then there was this great year calendar of 26,000 years, created by the fact that the Earth tilts from vertical at 23.5 degrees. And that means there are 2 axes of the Earth. There's the vertical axis, straight up and down, okay? Then there's the tilted axis, which we call the magnetic pole. And because it's tilted at 23.5 degrees, as the Earth rotates and revolves around the sun, that pole also gyrates. It gyrates around what do you want to call it, that vertical axis, so that you have the tilted axis revolving slowly around the vertical axis, North Pole. We call this is the polar axis I'm talking about. Okay, the North Pole, the magnetic North Pole, revolving around the North Pole, the ecliptic or the vertical North Pole. That takes 26,000 years to complete. This was discovered in ancient times in Africa, maybe 52,000 years ago. All right. Certainly, okay, let's be a little bit more conservative, because we're about through 1.5 cycles of the great year. That would have been 39,000 years ago at least. Okay, let's we can stay with that conservative. But you see, when they discovered this phenomenon, what they did is like what they did when they first made the calendar. They divided it into 12 arcs, and in each arc, they put a constellation which they gave a name, a spirit, a mythology to, kind of an essence that reflects cosmic energies that are mediated through the arc that the constellation rules. Now, each constellation stays in. Okay, how do they determine this? Well, we're coming up on it. In fact, as you mentioned, the first day of the coming equinox, if you happen to go outside right before dawn and it's clear, you will see a constellation rising right before the sun. That is the constellation of Pisces. Pisces has been rising right before the sun for about 30 years. And that's why we're in the age of Pisces. Okay? But in 2039, Pisces will stop rising right before the sun, and Aquarius will take its place. And so that will mean the end of the age of Pisces and the beginning of the age of Aquarius, which will go on for another 2,160 years. All right? Now, Aquarius was originally not the water man. In ancient Egyptian terms, Aquarius was Hathor Nut, the goddess of the waters. So you have an age coming up, which is the age of the great mother or the great goddess of the waters, in 23 years. 23 years. Now, these ages, that these are real phenomena. They're not just talking about what they say. Are you talking about astrology? Not exactly. We're talking about cosmic effects, cosmic forces, cosmic powers that impact the galaxy, impact the solar system, impact Earth, and impact everything on Earth. All right? Now, what the ancients did is that they were able to, shall we say, monitor these energies, look at, perceive what they were, understand them. I mean, after untold eons of observation. So each age itself has a special essence. And they knew that. They had developed that. This is the reason why and let me say one other thing. When one age transitions to another age, there's a period where everything that had come before begins to break down. As I was saying to somebody, I forget who I was saying this to, it's that famous phrase by William Butler Yeats. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. And this is what happens to the world, as the old order has to make way for the new order. And this is cosmically determined. This is not anything human beings control. Human beings like to think they control everything. They don't control hardly anything, really. All right? Now, there's actually two great years. There's one determined by the 12 signs of the what we call the zodiac, and there's 7 constellations around the North Pole. Okay, now so that means it's determined by the exact same thing. It's 26,000 years. It's 26,000 years around the equator, and it's 26,000 years around the North Pole, because it's the same phenomenon that creates it. Okay, it's the same tilt of the axis that revolves around the vertical axis. And whether you're measuring it by watching what arises at the equinox, or whether you're measuring it by what constellation is coming to the North Pole, or the magnetic North Pole, it's the same phenomenon. This is where it gets interesting, because this is the only time in 26,000 years when 2 ages are shifting off and 2 ages are shifting in within 11 years of one another. The first age is what I talked about, was the age of Aquarius. Pisces is moving off, Aquarius is moving in. And it'll stay there for 2,160 years at the equinox, right before the rise of the sun. But in the North Pole, where does the magnetic North Pole point to? It points to Ursa Minor, which is a little bear. However, the ancient Egyptians didn't call it the little bear, they call it the jackal. Wepwat the jackal, the opener of the way, or Anubis. All right? So you have to go to those old archetypes and kind of get an idea of what's really going on. But Anubis, that Wepwat the jackal, Anubis, started inhabiting the pole, I think, I got to think about this, 1,653 BC or thereabouts. Whether that's actually accurate or not, one thing for sure. In, let me see, 2050, there's going to be a new constellation at the North Pole of the magnetic North Pole. So that means a whole new age is starting there too. You get it? 2 ages going off, and 2 ages coming together within 10 years. No wonder the world is going to hell in a handbasket. Now, the question you need to ask yourself, or one needs to ask oneself, what is that constellation coming to the North Pole and will rule for 37 centuries? Its name is Cepheus. And you can see it, by the way. You don't have to take my word for it. You can see these things. In the next 4 or 5 days, you can go and, if it's clear, get up before the sun rises and go out and watch Pisces arising right before the sun does. You can see that. And you can also see Cepheus is in the northern heaven, getting ready in about 33 years, something like that. I'm sorry, 31 years, 2050, whatever that is. That's 34 years, coming to the North Pole. But who is Cepheus? Cepheus is the Ethiopian king. Or I call him the cosmic Ethiopian king.
That's right. That's right.
Hmm. There are three signs of his coming. You got some Rastafari in your audience, Kalam, because they're
I
going to
believe,
like this.
yeah, we do, we do.
The first sign of his coming, his first sign of his coming, was the coronation of Haile Selassie in 1933. The second sign of his coming was the so-called Million Man March in 1995. The third sign of his coming was none other than the election of Barack Hussein Obama in 2008. There are always signs. Always there are signs.
The Ethiopian king. I love that. I absolutely love that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Another thing as well. Please, audience members out there, if you can, give us a big thumbs up if you're loving the information that you're hearing so far. Just give us a big like. Let us know that you're liking the information. And please share this link. Share this link. Share it on your Google, your Facebook, your Twitters, your Reddits, everywhere possible. Please share this link because it's not too often that we get these living legends, on the show, on Talk of the Titans, or on any show in general, to actually give us these breakdowns that we don't normally hear anywhere else. So please hit the share button and get all your friends involved with this conversation. And of course, I'm going to open up the link a little bit later on in the show where you can ask Dr. Finch any question you like pertaining to the subjects that he's spoken about so far.
Don't forget to get in touch with Amanette. Blue Water. Don't forget to get in touch with Blue Water family too.
That's right.
He's the one in charge of everything that's going to happen from the 17th to the 23rd. Blue Water family. Just Google it. Go to the website. That's what has to be done.
Indeed. All right, and you know what? I have to ask you about this as well. There is obviously the equinox that's taking place. In ancient Egypt, there was the heliacal rising of Sirius I think is roughly taking place now in August, roughly between the 5th and the 8th or 9th. My nose is a bit blocked. Sorry, family members. What should we be doing on these momentous days? Like, how do we mark these occasions? What should we do to prepare ourselves and to align ourselves to these cosmic energies?
All right. First of all, you got to know when they're going to happen. And it's a good time to sit somewhere quiet, 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, 4 a.m. no later than 5 at most. Sit quietly, empty your mind, and let your ancestors and these cosmic powers speak to you, because they will. They're always trying to speak to you, Your ancestors in particular, but also the cosmic powers that determine our destiny are trying to always speak to us. But whenever they try, they get it's like calling and getting a busy signal, because our minds are all filled with all this cacophony of noise, mental noise, oral noise, verbal noise. So that's the reason why you empty your mind, you quiet your mind, so that you can. And at that time of night or early morning when the world is asleep, then you can get messages. Yes, indeed, especially the women. Especially the women. And also pay attention to your dreams, especially the women. The women are the dreamers. Yeah. Pay attention to your dreams.
Great stuff.
Don't just throw them away. Those are messages from the cosmos.
Good. All right. Before we actually go in to the next, step in the presentation, I would just love to just draw everybody's attention. Actually, if you're actually new to Talk with the Titans, Talk with the Titans was birthed out the idea that the intellectual giants. Sorry, if everybody could just mute their mics. the intellectual giants, the titans of the community, will have a well-organized place or platform to present information, discuss information, and debate information that's affecting our community, proposed by you, our audience members out there, the community. And also, if you please check out the rest of Talk with the Titans or the Titans TV. We have past shows. We've had Harry Rosenberg, who will be debating Polite come March the 20th. We've also had Zion Lex on, Sarah Suit Seti. Who else? Team Osiris, Amon Ra Squad, Red Pill, Blue Pill. Sorry, Red Pill. Orishas. This is the Babalawo and the Apetebi who came in and gave us a wonderful breakdown of the Orishas and what is Ifa, as well as Gano Grills as well. And if you like the debates that takes place, we've got tons of debates that takes place every single week. We post up information, Speaker's Corner, where is a place that we have freedom of speech, and we have all different types of ideologies and backgrounds coming together to debate, from Muslims to atheists to Christians to Kemetic practitioners to Jews to Sikhs. All different types of people come together and debate. And if you like that information, please check that side of our channel out. If you want to hear more of my personal information or personal works, we've got me over here, another playlist, which is the Kalam playlist. We've got the 42 Negative Confessions. That is me reading the ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Papyrus of Anui. And this is the Medu Neter itself, and breaking it down into the English. And we've got me debating at Speaker's Corner, talking about whether Muhammad is black or white, Kemetic rituals, so that's prayers, Moses found in Egypt, and so forth and so forth. So please check that out. And we've also got a show that's dedicated to the women as well. So if any ladies on here that would love to talk about secular information or social issues and current affairs, as well as culture, we've got a show called Trending Topics, and we discuss all these different things as well. So please check out the different playlists on Talk with the Titans, Titans TV, to see more about what we do. Okay. So yeah, Dr. Finch, if you could give us some more information actually on the African origins of science. How did the Africans develop science and take it to the next level?
Yeah, well, in Africa, science is both. You're talking about things that are both visible and what happens in a place like Kemet and other places is that the invisible knowledge comes first, all right? And the invisible knowledge is never, what's the word? It's never supplanted. It is never shunted aside. And it, you might say, informs or gives rise to the external arenas of science. And let's talk about architecture. Architecture wasn't just to build beautiful buildings. Architecture, if you look at those fabulous temples, were created to literally channel energy to the sanctuary, and also provide literally a home for the god, the deity, or the netters. Because the netters live in those places. They live in those temples. They were there, and they lived and operated in those temples. So those temples had to conform to really specific criteria of development. They had to be built with certain kinds of stone. They had to be built according to certain orientations to the heavenly bodies. They had to be constructed in a certain way so that they could literally become homes of the god. That's just the architecture itself, okay? And so the architecture was enlivened by this, by the spiritual essence of these practitioners, so that an architect wasn't just somebody who built. He also was an adept. He was a spiritual adept. And why have mathematics? Mathematics, in particular, does what? It enables one to, especially applied mathematics, and this is the reason why for the ancient Egyptians, mathematics was always geometry. It was always geometry, all right? And this is why geometry developed there first. Not just geometry, trigonometry, and I even have evidence that calculus developed there first, because that became the tools by which they created these spiritual, religious, and scientific edifices. They often called their temples Per-Ankh, which means house of life. And so one of the other things that it was a place of healing. It was a place that people came for the healing work, for the healing power of the deity, god or goddess. So that's the other reason why the construction of the temples had to conform very exactly and minutely to certain criteria, certain parameters, certain measurements. And they had to be built with certain kinds of stone. And they had to be oriented in a certain way to channel all that energy coming from the cosmos as part of the healing work. So the healing work, the architectural work, the mathematical work, the scientific work were all interwoven, all right? And the spiritual work. So the priests had to be scientists and mathematicians and vice versa. The mathematics and the architecture, therefore, was informed, you might say, by the spiritual mission of all of Egypt, of all of Kemet. Okay? And so so their investigations into math and science weren't just empirical, that is, just developing theorems and equations and methodologies. It was a product of their investigations into the spiritual nature of the universe itself, in which they traveled out there, not with spaceships. The Dogon, people of Kemet, they didn't travel out there in spaceships. The ancient Egyptians had a concept they called the Ka, which was the double or the energy body. And the Ka and the dreaming body was that aspect of that's why I talk about dreaming, that could be controlled volitionally in such a way that you could actually move out beyond any, shall we say, restrictions here on Earth and into the cosmos and actually do research out there, investigations. That's what they did. So did the Dogon, by the way. That's how they knew what they knew. You say, how do they know so much about the cosmos? Because they went out there and they investigated, and they didn't need spaceships to do it. So you can see, we're not talking about ideas, mentalities, methodologies that we understand today. We've lost that. Okay? So when we go out into space, we build spaceships to do it. And we don't learn any more than those ancients did, who, while their physical bodies were here on Earth, actually could explore space, and did, the farthest reaches of the universe, and they did. Now, I'm not asking anybody to believe that, but the proof is in, what am I saying, their constructs, what they're able to put together, what they were able to do. And did they meet other beings out there? They most assuredly did. Oh, yes, the universe is populated by sentient beings. We're not the only ones out there with brains and a mind. Okay? So, and did they exchange information? Oh, yes, sure they did. Still not the same as saying that that E.T. had to come in and build the pyramids for them. As you know, to acknowledge a interaction with cosmic beings is not the same thing as saying that those beings came and just set everything up in the civilization. And I reject that categorically.
Definitely.
So you got to understand, therefore, there is a spiritual dimension, an energetic dimension, an empirical dimension, and a physical dimension, not separate. All because you know what they could do in their dreams? They could actually take their physical bodies and merge it with their dreaming bodies and actually make those voyages. I know I'm talking, I mean, we don't understand all of that. We don't understand that. And
Mm.
yet, this is what happened.
So, what would you say to, because, a lot of people, I know there's a bit of a feedback, Dr. Finch. Is it possible for you to mute your mic, and your image has become still? I don't know if there's anything you can do.
I can see my image moving, but you say you can't?
No, I can't at the moment. If it's possible, just press the right click button and press reload. Right click and reload, and hopefully you'll come
Let me
back in
see.
again.
I see the reload. Okay, I'm doing that.
Okay, so we're gonna have Dr. Charles Finch come back in again. I'm gonna ask him the question because you know what? I know a lot of my family members out there, they think they kind of neglect or reject the spiritual realm or the spiritual aspect of things, and I don't know. I don't know. What do you think about the whole thoughts of astral projecting? Allowing your spirit to see things that your physical body can't possibly perceive and conceive. Can we bring back spiritual information into the physical realm itself, or do you think that this is completely, unrealistic, and fantastic? So I'm actually going to ask this question to Dr. Charles Finch now, and I believe he's back. Um, I don't know if you're. There you go. Yes, you are back with us. Excellent. So yes,
Okay.
Dr. Charles Finch. What do you think about the people that completely negate the spiritual aspect of the world and only
I don't.
focus?
I just don't have time for that argument.
Mm,
It's just so completely fantastic that there are people who don't have any sense of the spiritual dimension of existence, because that is the real place where existence takes place. The physical dimension is kind of what we call, I like this word, an epiphenomenon. Is a what do you want to say? It is a side effect of the spiritual world. Now, if you don't know that, then there's nothing I can't. We can't talk, and I can't. What's the word? I can't. Um, I'm not going to try to convince you. You either know it or you don't know it, and yet it's all around you. It's in you every time you go to sleep, every time you have an intuition, every time you dream. You're just ignoring the truth and the reality of a dimension that is the real. That's where reality really is. And so I don't know that I can even get into that conversation because I have no patience for it, quite honestly.
and especially, I know you are a member initiate of the West African traditional practice or spiritual practice. I believe Mami Wata. So could
And
you
the voodoo, and the voodoo also.
and the Vodou also. Could you just talk us through your experience of joining this ancient culture and society and
They keep looking.
the wonderful information and
They,
and
they,
wisdom it departs onto you.
all I can tell you is they came looking for me, and when they came looking for me, I did not resist. And in doing so, and I'm a little unusual in one way. There aren't that if you take 100 Mami Wata practitioners, 100, any 100 of them, let's just take 100, and you can multiply it. There are 40 million actually, but let's just take any 100 of them. Only 5 of them are men. So I'm a little unusual in that way. There aren't that many male Mami Wata devotees. I'm one. Um, and people have this. If you go online and read about Mami Wata, there's a very strange things they say about her. They say that she is to be feared. She brings disease. If you go into water, she drowns you. And I actually go and I talk to Mommy. I said, Mommy, I don't recognize this Mommy they're talking about. She says, well, you got to understand, what people project onto me, that's what they get. If they project fear, if they project all of these negative impulses on Mami Wata, or not just Mami Wata, any of them, any of the great powers of Africa, that's what you're going to get back. I have none. That has never been my attitude or feeling. I don't have any feeling about that whatsoever, so I don't get that at all. I don't even recognize that when people say that. So mommy is the great mother of the waters. And yes, she is with me, and she protects me, and she protects mine. She protects my family, too. I remember back in 1989, as I was beginning to get interested in traditional African spirituality, I just said it to the universe. I didn't know anything. I said, I will do this, and I will be faithful to it, but you have to protect my family. And you know what? They have. And they're real. They're more real than we are. And I'm not asking anybody to believe it. I don't really care whether anybody believes it or not. Either you know it or you don't know it. You feel it or you don't feel it. She's real to you, or they, the other Vodou, they are real to you or they aren't. And it's not my job to convert. I'm not interested in conversion. I'm not a missionary. If someone asks me like you're asking me, I'll tell you. I'll tell you all about mommy. I'll tell you all about the Vodou. I was initiated in Togo by the Togolese, the Ewe. So they initiated not only mommy, but also the Vodou. I also might add Afa, which is the Togolese version of Ifa. So there it is. Not a secret. I don't make a point of talking about it, but if someone asks me, I do respond.
Wow. Wow. Absolutely amazing. You know what? I'm feeling really privileged right now to actually hear this information, and I believe my audience members may just be in wonder right now because I don't think they've actually heard this information before imparted on them from one of our greats, as yourself. Unfortunately, we do have the echo going on as well. But you know what? I'm going to allow you to go back into the presentation that you've got for us. I believe we're on the third section talking about the African origins of culture and how we birthed culture and civilization and the great wonders and gifts we gave to the world, such as science and technology. So if you could give us some information on the African origins of culture, that would be wonderful.
Oh boy. Well, you got to. I'm going to be kind of brief on this one because this really requires a more further. What's the word? Explanation, and I think some of this I'm going to reserve for the presentations and workshops that I have coming up when I'm in the UK. The first thing you want to, and this is as much as I'm going to say. The first thing that people need to realize is that when human beings first created societies and culture, they did it around what I call the motherhoods, what people call the matriarchy. We call it the matriarchy if you want to, the motherhoods. And it stayed that way until about 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, so that was about, we don't even know how long that was. So even humanity's first concept of what was God, or the deity, was feminine. Now, obviously something's changed, right? Something has drastically changed. You look at all the major religions of the world, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, just the starters, all patriarchal, and the deities are all male. Didn't used to be that way. Now, the explanation for all of that is just not something that we can really get into in the 5 or 10 minutes that I have left this evening. But I would then ask your audience to get in touch with Amanette, and she can tell you when I'm going to deal with that. In fact, I'm going to deal with that subject in 2 different workshops. So, and we will too. And what can I tell you? It will be serious. It's a serious matter. And we will talk about how the patriarchy evolved out of the matriarchy. Okay, that's what happened. It evolved out of the matriarchy. And the other thing you heard me mention, on the one hand, the great mother of the waters, who we call Aquarius. That's one. And then we talked about the cosmic Ethiopian king. Well, this is one of the things that is happening in this century. You're finding, finally, that there's a kind of equilibrium that is being established between matriarchy and patriarchy. Maybe for the first time in history, except in ancient Kemet. In ancient Kemet, they found that equilibrium. Almost nowhere else did they. And it's being real. I think now what is happening, cosmically speaking, that equilibrium is being established. One other thing, you ought to read the books by Carlos Castaneda, 10 books, detailing his apprenticeship with the Yaqui Indian sage Don Juan Matus. You know what Don Juan Matus said? He said that the universe, the whole universe, is about 2/3 female. And I said, yeah. I said, whoa. I said, whoa. I mean, that requires some. What's the word? Some. I'm getting tired, so I can't even come up with the word. That requires some rumination. That's what he said, and I didn't have any reason to disbelieve him.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So we will look at that. We will discuss these things beginning on what's today? What is today? I'm losing track. Today is Monday. I guess we start on whenever the 17th is.
Thursday.
No. Yeah, Wednesday.
Okay, so you know what? Let's up the ante right now. If everybody could just mute their mics real quickly. Okay. I'm gonna invite our audience members, our panel members in to actually ask Dr. Charles Finch any questions. We only allow one burning question that you have.
Yeah, please. One question. Short. We don't need a whole. That's the only problem with asking questions. People want to expand. Short questions, please. One.
All right. So I'm actually gonna start off with our panel members right now, and I'm actually gonna open it up for our audience members to ask their questions. So if anybody wants to ask their question, please give me a signal, and then I'll put you straight in. Okay. Is that you, Brother Konsu?
Yes,
Harry?
sir. What's up, bro? How you feel?
I'm good.
How you doing, man? Yes, Dr. Finch, it's an honor to be able to speak with you, man. You've been very influenced, and a big influence in my life as a scholar. And the question I have is, what is your opinion on the influence of the Adrinka people in physics? Because I've done some research and found that their symbols were early forms of physics or relative to.
Yeah.
What is your opinion?
I have no reason to doubt it, because that's the thing about African symbolism. There's so little that we really know about it, quite honestly. There's so much more to it than we are even giving. And I think that requires systematic study, not only just a few days or weeks or months, over a period of years. I don't know enough about Adinkra to be able to give you a definitive answer. But yeah, I'd say that there are aspects of it that could relate to the development of theoretical physics. But if you were asking me, okay, give me examples, I couldn't. I just don't know Adinkra well enough to be able to answer in that way. But I kind of agree with that assessment, actually. But I can't say more than that, really. Interesting question, though.
Thank you so much,
go back and study the Adinkra a little bit more.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Excellent. And that was our brother Konsu from Team Osiris on the horizon. So anybody else who has a question who is right here right now, please just give me a signal and I'll put you straight in. Okay. I'm going to let our brother Shezmu go in and then brother Harry.
Yes, indeed. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes. I can, yes.
Yes, sir. First and foremost, I ditto what Brother Konsu said. Your knowledge and information over the years has influenced me as well, and I appreciate you. And Kalam, you have done it again. You have truly brought a titan to the show. Much respect and honors to you, Dr. Finch, and to you also, Kalam. My question would be, do you think that the Dogon, I know, when I heard some lectures and got some information, you spoke about the Dogon having keen eyesight at night, if I'm not mistaken. And do you think that they had the possibly had technology like telescopes,
They
or
didn't
do
need
you
it.
think they were
No, they didn't
okay?
need it. I already said, I already referred, I already kind of made a reference to it. They had
Right, right,
perfected
right.
they had perfected their energy bodies and dreaming bodies to such an extent because they deliberately isolated themselves in the along the Bandiaga cliffs in Mali, away from the possibility of conquest, that they could make forays into the universe that way, and they did. That's how they know so much. They
Understood.
did not need the. Now that's the whole point. They did not need telescopes. They did not need telescopes. The only technology they had was, let's call it their spiritual technology or their energetic technology, and they had refined it and developed to such an extent they literally could make forays into the universe. I'm not saying they're the only people who could do that, but they certainly
Right,
were one of those who could do that, and that's what
right.
they did. That's the only way
And
you can explain, if you read the book The Pale Fox, the only way you can explain their knowledge. You can't explain it any other way.
understood. And lastly, what would be the timeline? Like we talk about 26,000 years. Um, what is the true timeline? Is it 6,000? Is it 12?
For
I
what?
mean, six for seeing like the constellation revelate, the revelatory
Oh,
changes over these,
26
timeline.
26,000 years. And now the question is,
26,000.
did the ancients actually watch for 26,000 years before they arrived at the great year concept? I don't know. Is it
Okay.
impossible? No. But if you were going to observe that, you would have to observe it for 26,000 years. Either that or
Indeed.
they found a way of calculating it. Now, if you ask which did they do, I don't have an answer for that. But they
Okay.
knew it. My God, they knew it. Going back a minimum of 39,000 years and maybe back to 52,000 years. I
Okay.
mean, it
Thank
boggles
you
the
so much.
mind, really. Yeah.
Check. Thank you so much, Kalam.
Okay, great. That's my brother Shesmu right there. I'm gonna invite Rabbi Harry Rosenberg, to ask a question as well.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for addressing the scholar. Quick question. Can you comment on the nature of the inside of the Great Pyramid, what it was built with, and if that material has any connection to electricity technology? I know there's a lot of theories out there.
Well, I think the thing about the Great Pyramid is not only what it was built, because some of those, on the outside, those stones were like 2.5 tons. But inside the king's chamber, those stones were like 60 tons. And built from a certain kind, a certain type of stone quarried from the same place in Aswan. Now, that stone was important, but it was also the actual construction, the actual configuration of what they call the king's chamber and the queen's chamber, and those descending passages, ascending passages. Those they were actually constructed in a certain way to achieve certain effects. I think, for example, and I'm only saying I think because there is some speculation about it, that there is a passageway from the Sphinx to the Great Pyramid, and I think that the completion of initiation for a priest in ancient Egypt would have been in the Great Pyramid. And so the so-called sepulcher in the Great Pyramid, in the King's Chamber, if you've ever been in there, it wasn't for mortal remains. If anything, it was for the symbolic and mythological death and resurrection of the postulant who was in the process of being initiated to the priesthood. And by the way, this is what was apparent in Trump. When you were always tested in the process of becoming a priest in ancient Egypt. You only had one chance. You failed it one time. That was it. You couldn't go any further. That was it. Forever. You had to get it right that first time only. There were no second chances. Not for that. Okay? But that was where the Great Pyramid would have been, where the final, initiation would have taken place. And the way it was constructed, the way it was put together, as you say, the stones, and we don't know enough about the way in which they concentrated energy. They say pyramids concentrate energy. Yeah. And all of that being the case,
Okay.
we don't know enough. We think
I,
we know.
I appreciate that.
We think we know, but we don't really know enough about the Great Pyramid. But I can say at least as much as I've said.
Okay, I appreciate that because I was just under the impression that there's a lining of quartz inside, and we know scientifically today if quartz is vibrated at a certain frequency, it secretes electricity. So I was wondering if there was a non-metaphysical narrative to the power that we're discussing that they were harnessing.
There is. There always is. There always is. By the way, I wasn't when, but I don't know about the quartz. I have not seen the quartz or heard about the quartz. I've been in the King's Chamber several times. I haven't been to every particular chamber there is in the pyramid, but there always is, what did you say, a non-metaphysical correlation, shall we say, to anything that might have been happening in the non-physical or energetic domain. Those things were never separated. They were always interconnected. So yeah, there's nothing to suggest that didn't happen.
Okay.
I don't know where the quartz. I don't know where the quartz is, quite honestly. I haven't seen it.
I'm not 100% sure. We got to look into it. And just my final statement, I appreciate your time. I don't know if this is relevant, but you mentioned the kind of initiation in the priesthood. And now I noticed before there was someone speaking, Brother Konsu, I don't know how to pronounce it exactly, and I saw the background of his picture. He had the all-seeing eye with a Freemasonic sign on it. And I wanted to know, because there's the words initiation there. What is the connection between those two, if any?
The all-seeing eye. Well, I mean, for that you have to go into Masonry. Now, Masonry relates itself back to Hiram, who was supposed to have built the Temple of Solomon for him. But it really goes back, if anything, to Imhotep. Now, I would have to have seen I would have to see the. I don't remember. I know what you're talking about, but I didn't really keep it in my eye. But the all-seeing eye, that's the eye of Horus. That's the eye. It's not only the eye of Horus, it's the eye of spiritual vision. And I think that's about as much as we can probably say about it at this moment. We'd have to kind of look at it more carefully, and we'd have to go into it a little more carefully, and more time than we really have to do at this time.
Okay, well, that's my piece.
All right, thank you. And could I ask everybody who is, already asked their questions to, please remove themselves so other people who are trying to get in right now can actually get in and ask their dying questions, because we're literally entering into the last 2 to 5 minutes of the show, and we're running out of time, and we need to just cut it back as much as possible. So if anybody on the panel has any last dying questions to ask Dr. Finch, please ask it now.
I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Robert Balval mentioned something about a steel plate and a ruler being found in the Great Pyramid, and the steel plates being held in the basement of the British Museum for over 100 years, and the ruler's now turned up in the museum in Scotland. I think he mentions it in one of his books, Black Genesis, and in one of his lectures. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I know that there was steel was actually found in the joints of one of the stone joints of the Great Pyramid, and Egyptologists have sort of refused to acknowledge. They are assuming that it was a late addition because steel was not supposed to have been able to be created at that time. Okay, but so the only thing you can say, there is evidence that yes, steel was there at a much earlier time than metallurgical history would allow, and they didn't use steel that much, though. I mean, not that it was unknown, but they more likely used copper and bronze. I think because copper, someone was mentioned, a conductor. Copper has certain properties, conductive properties and others, that was more along the lines of what the ancient Egyptians needed it for. But yes, there is evidence of steel going back that far.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. And again, I've literally put the link to join in on the panel. So if you've got a question for Dr. Charles Finch, the link is actually in the description box. And if you will actually want to join us in the after show discussions that we normally do have, we usually have other Titans joining in right at the end. It's just to have discussions at the end of the show. If you'd like to join in, please hit the link down below in the description box. Join us in right now, and we can, ask your question live on air. And again, please, if you have the capacity to, please hit the share button that's usually down below somewhere. Share the link with your friends. Invite your friends into the conversation. And let us know your thoughts on the presentation so far. The information that you've heard. We've heard so many great things from the African origins of science, technology, culture, to the celestial wheel in heavens with the 26,000 years, jumping from one era to the next in terms of the spring equinox that locates us within a certain time and space within the universe, and the different what do we call it now, the different houses, the 22,150 year houses as well. So to let us know your comments on those types of issues that has been discussed so far. We've now got Anka Kek from the Amen Squad, who's just okay. Dr. Charles Finch.
Yeah, I'm kind of coming to the end of my availability here.
Okay.
Because I'm getting on a plane tomorrow night.
That's right.
To come there.
That's right.
I've still got a lot to do between now and then. So I'm going to kind of have to bring my part of it to the close. I do want to encourage people to visit my website, charlessfinch.com. That's charlessfinch.com, real simple. I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and Pinterest, I'm told. So, got various things going on in those through those media for anybody who might be interested.
Definitely. We've literally just had one of the greatest Titans that are with us right now. If someone could just mute their mics, because we're literally about to wrap up this segment of the show. We're going to have an after-show discussion, so please join us if you're watching live right now. In the description box, just go in the description box, hit the link, and you'll be in right now. And I'm going to please ask you to please comment, like. If you like the information, give us a big thumbs up and share the link so more people can see the information, hear the information, and learn from one of our greatest Titans with living legend that we have here with us right now. Dr. Charles Finch, it's been an absolute pleasure to actually have you and to host you right here on Talk with the Titans. I actually can't wait, for when you land in the UK. I'm going to be with you from the very first day you land down. I'm also going to be carrying you from the carrying you from wherever you are to wherever you need to go. So it's going to be an absolute pleasure to actually spend some time with you, to rub shoulders with you, and to learn much more from you as well. And I'm going to give a big shout out to our Blue Water family, Aminette, who's actually going to be hosting as well, the lectures and tours that's going to be taking place from the 17th of this month, March. That's the Thursday all the way to the 23rd. There's going to be on the Sunday an equinox gathering as well, which is going to be absolutely phenomenal. So please, if you want to get in touch with the Blue Water family and you want to get your tickets, if you're in the UK, please visit the website. The website is www.bluewaterfamilywordpress.com. I'm definitely going to leave that information in the link down below. Dr. Charles Finch, again, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. If there's any last message or announcement you would like to make, the floor is open to you.
My only last message is that I will see you soon.
Okay, I'll see you soon as well. All right, so we're signing out. You've been watching Talk with the Titans with the living legend himself, Dr. Charles Finch, and I've been your host, Kalam L, signing out. Peace.